Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Patches. We've really covered a lot already in terms of registries, both from the perspective of discovery and also thinking about registries as infrastructure for control. We are joined again by some of our Lightning Talk guests, but I want to take a second before we get into a group conversation to just welcome our new participants and panelists here. And start with Scott and then Balazs, and then we'll talk to Pradyumna a little bit about just what they're working on so that each of you have some context for our broader discussion. So Scott, I wonder if we could start with you and maybe just on the heels of the ANS topic, can you tell us a bit about how you've been working on registries at GoDaddy and really, what you're thinking about for scalable collaboration as we move forward there. I loved the line in the article you had about essentially your agent is an island today. So sort of solving some of that problem. It'd be great to hear.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it's great to be here. I run domains backend engineering over GoDaddy. I've been in domains for quite a while before that. So we had a problem in the sense that we were starting to roll out agents for customers and agents for ourselves. And we're like, how do we register them? And then we discovered that IETF paper and then OWASP modification from Vineet, Ken, and others. And what was really interesting about that is it moved from the concept of just an identity that was sort of like a domain name or whatever to a strong crypto identity. I wish we'd had that. I wish we'd had that back in 1995 when SSL certs were invented. We'd have a lot less problems now. And this gets back to some of the points we've heard earlier about we are not ready. The internet is not ready for a agentic autonomous web where digital assets communicate with each other. So November 1st, we rolled out a early production implementation of an agent name service. Ours is really simple. It's a thin registry for agents. It took the key elements of the ANS draft and then kind of stripped them out a little bit and said, hey, I've got A2A, I've got AI cards, I've got MCP, whatever protocols out there, we're going to allow you to stamp them, put them into this registration system. We'll put them in an immutable log so that we can't validate, so that others won't have trust in what we're doing. And then we'll publish that via API, via a pub sub feed. So thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you. Balazs, I wonder if we could hear a little bit from you and what you've been working on at .agents and maybe also how that differentiates from what we've already heard about in terms of DIDs.
Yeah, sure. Quick clarification is just .agent or agent community. Effectively, the registry we are here with is called AID or Agent Identity and Discovery. It's an extremely lightweight DNS-focused spec. It uses already existing technologies that every developer knows and trusts. Effectively, the idea behind AID is a bit more decentralization. So it can be issued by the developer for their own agent and can kind of like create trust towards like what's the public information, where is the endpoint of the agent that another agent or a human or a client wants to have a conversation or interact with. So MCP A2A or any kind of like endpoint that you can name, and it can be like strengthened with an issued key that acts as a unique ID, but also acts as a public signature that can be signed by the endpoint itself when there is the need for proving that the public information actually matches the endpoint information. And that's it, basically. So AID wants to keep things light. There is a lot of other specs, A2A, MCP, and what the future brings. It is really just about where is your agent and what I discovered endpoint actually matches your backend, and that's it. The rest kind of like handled by the more complex specs. So that's kind of what AID is, and happy to discuss why these decisions were made and why I didn't mention DIDs.
Great. And then Pradyumna, we've been involved in Project Nanda from sort of the early days. Can you tell us a little bit more about where you are at and some of the sort of switchboard language you've been using?
Yeah, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here on the panel. So I think we are in a very exciting time right now in the context of agentic AI and what we call the agentic web. When we think about registries itself, we are at a time where a lot of different registry architectures are coming up. Enterprise is building their own registries to hold their own AI agents, which is great. But the big risk over here is silos and lack of interoperability. I think Michael touched upon this in his talk as well, in terms of the universal sort of registry broker. And this is along the lines of what we are also thinking along at Project Nanda. As part of Project Nanda, we focus on various different components of the agentic web. But in the context of the registry, what we are most excited about is this idea of a switchboard. So not worrying about what's in a particular registry, which is the prerogative of various players, various sort of registry architectures, but more about how do registries stay discoverable, composable, auditable, and governable across these different architectures, different enterprise silos, but still contributing to an open agentic web. This is what we call a switchboard. Just throwing back to the early days of telephone, when you had to sort of manually switch between different telephone providers to even make that communication possible. Of course, we won't manually be switching between agents, but we need to ensure that interoperability. Very recently, we put out some preliminary work that we worked on with the agency team at Cisco to demonstrate a very initial proof of concept of such a switchboard that allows agents that reside in sort of different registry architectures, different registry philosophies across enterprise silos to find each other, talk to each other, communicate with each other, and really contribute to this idea of an open agentic web. So that's sort of what we've been focusing on recently.
Great, thank you. I mean, I'd like to open it up, and also, we have Marco and Michael from their lightning talk sessions back as well on this panel. This is really an open discussion across the different approaches we've heard about, and I'm hoping each of you will jump in and weigh in, especially the topic I'd like to maybe kick off with is just thinking about, what are really then some of the minimum shared components across these different types of approaches.
I mean, I'm very happy to start. I think it's a very clear need that needs to be solved. That who can we trust? How is that decided in terms of like what agents can trust and where they are? So I think like having so many approaches in their early days is like just very clear that there is a need, even though today's agents are not the agents that any of these specs are actually written for. That is coming very, very soon. So like being ready and having these specs fleshed out, having a community kind of like being implemented here and there is going to be very important, as the change will happen very fast.
Things I want to flag to the audience. And also, if you guys are watching, please click the share button to extend the stream out to your friends and colleagues. But in terms of registries and in terms of communication protocols, I think that there's two camps. There's a camp that thinks, okay, we're going to have a one-size-fits-all solution. All the agents in the world can go in this one place. They're going to talk to each other in the same way, and this is just how the world is. And then there are the other camps who think, well, that doesn't make any sense. Number one, the scale of the amount of agents that we're going to have is going to be incredible, especially if you think about the fact that small language models are starting to take off, and soon we'll be able to run agents easily from our phones and our laptops. So that's much greater than the scale that we see with the web today and just putting a website on the internet. And the other thing to think about is really from a compliance and regulatory perspective, agents will have to talk to each other differently depending on vertical and niche they're in. And agents will have to be discovered differently depending on those verticals too. If you're talking to an agent for mental health, that's very different than talking to an agent for finance and distribution. And I think we'll have to touch on to these problems as we build out these registries and be very careful on how we do it, especially when we think about things like fraud and compliance.
Yeah, and sorry, just sort of building up on what Michael mentioned, completely agree, because I think the scale at which we'll have agents, not just at enterprise, but also on the edge, the ephemerality of agents will come and go, especially in terms of what Michael rightly touched upon in terms of small language models, but also the sort of uh, the metadata that will be required to support things like discovery, trust, verification, capability authentication, which is so much more detailed than what was required for uh, the current web. Means two things. First of all, we do need to think about these new types of registry architectures that have been so nicely mentioned in all of these lightning talks. Marco's talk about the RC 8004 and so many other things. But it will be, as Michael touched upon, it's not practical to think about one size fit all solution that everyone will immediately adopt. So we do need to think about interoperability, both in terms of trust, metadata schemas and how they plug into each other, identities, ephemerality, and how we sort of integrate all of this is a very challenging but very exciting problem.
In terms of that one size fits all, I don't know anybody thinking about that or looking at it, but we do see convergence. Like I mentioned A2A, MCP, everybody else has mentioned that. And I really actually like some of that. I don't know that we want one even for agents or one even for tools, but we maybe don't want 100,000 either. What they're bringing seems to be working well for what I call a holistic framework for trust with agents. I know with me, the situation is so large, and I only know the smallest bit of it. We're focused on the 1%. We're focused on, hey, it's a trusted transaction. Are they coming with some sort of verifiable credential? What can we do where we can say, we're going to get audited because we know there's going to be fraud or whatever else? What value can we provide? And then get out of the way and let the rest of the community work with it. Also, in terms of the one solution, we have certainly Web 2 elements in ours. You can't do this with Web 2. There's Web 3 elements that this was sort of written for it, but I'm not certain you can do it all with Web 3 either when you're talking high trust. And that gets back sort of to the ANS framework that we heard from Vineet about.
Yeah, I wonder, Marco, if you can touch a little bit on sort of how the Web 2, Web 3 worlds might really collaborate.
Yes, I will make a slightly different point. We are all like enthusiasts about standards and technical people, and so we would probably like talk for hours about what's the best standard. Do we want to have multiple standards? Do we want to aggregate them? Do we want to switch them? But I think that the only thing that matters is getting adoption. And so the business component is more important than having the best standard or the best choices. And so from our perspective, using blockchains is not a technical choice, it's a business decision to credibly promise that it's not owned by a specific company and to involve people in the process and building directly with the people, basically getting adoption while you design the protocol, which is the opposite of what you usually do, right? You come up and say, this is the draft of the protocol, is super important, is more important, because at the end of the day, we have like large players that will anyway like push other kind of protocols in case with other approaches. So what matters is not the technical difference, but the business difference. And last on this, agents will exchange value for sure. And currently, distributed technologies are the best technology for agents to transfer economical value because they are global. So you don't need like to make a different agreement with different endpoints. This is PayPal, this is with MasterCard, this is Stripe. It's just one logically global endpoint. And they cost nothing, like they cost like now a fragment of a cent. So I see this as as a natural energy and force to answer to your question, to bring together Web 2 and Web 3, not starting from like the values of let's make it decentralized, but talking a language that the business speaks, which is this payment is close to be free and is immediate versus spending 80 cents with Visa and waiting 3 days. This is a language that I think everybody can understand.
Yeah, and
think
one of our future events for Patchwork will be covering and digging much deeper on the payment side, especially. But I think I hear your point. I think it's also really interesting to imagine, what does that really mean for an enterprise when they're trying to sort of navigate this world and taking that business perspective. Wonder if anybody else can comment on that too.
I think the point that Marco made about adoption is really important, because there's a lot of hype around agents today, and there's so many being registered and put in these different registries. At HOL, we've already indexed 28,000 have an active endpoint. And I can say with a high degree of certainty that less than 0.1% of those you can actually talk to and reach and call a tool with. This is so nascent right now. We are in such early stages, and that's why it's so important that using these tools is very easy and streamlined. That's one of the reasons why I love the DNS implementation from .agent, because it's so simple to use and implement from the DNS side.
Yeah, and like, just to kind of like repeat a little bit of what Scott said, but just to Marco, like you mentioned payment, like not every agent will exchange resources or have payments. Like that will be a subsection that will do work, but some will be just conversational or information exchange. Like an API endpoint, right? Like payment endpoints and API endpoints are completely different. Like most API endpoints are not payment endpoints, and like most agents will not be payment endpoints either. So like, depending on your use case, you might want to have easy access to a wallet that can do crypto transactions or any type of transaction. But in other cases, like that's not a necessity, and you don't have to build out the infrastructure to host a wallet, to interact with a wallet. Of course, there will be tools and everything, but like sort of like business is one thing, but also simplicity. Like MCP is extremely simple, right? Like at the first version of MCP was like almost uncomparable to the MCP we have today that just got transferred to this new foundation, because it was like everyone could just do it on their own. They didn't have to like go to another place to learn about technologies of how they work, risking something. It just worked. And so like, while you are right that like ecosystem and implementation is what makes a standard more than whether it lives under a standards organization, 100% agree. And business, of course, is important, but like, I think the usability out of the gate is equally important, because if it's too complex, there is no business that will implement a too complex solution at the end of the day. Even if it's the most amazing technology, like it will break the adoption cycle, even if it would make 100% business sense.
I wonder maybe if any of you will also comment on sort of, you mentioned, Michael, that it's a nascent and very quickly evolving space. Is there anything that you really see sort of as maybe relevant right now, but long term maybe less relevant? How much are we going to have sort of the switchboards and these brokers involved early, and then maybe less so? If you have any comments on sort of trajectory there of what belongs also as extensibility versus standards.
I can get started with that, but I think as Michael mentioned, very nascent stage. So the exact notion of what brokers and switchboards might do will certainly change, but there will remain core necessities. For example, access control. Certain agents will be on, let's say, the intranet of agents versus the internet of agents, which will certainly require some sort of brokering, switchboarding mechanism. There'll be trust requirements, VCs, verified credentials, credentialers. And I think all of this will play into what we are today calling the switchboard and broker, which will most certainly evolve very quickly over the next few months. But I feel there will remain some necessity for this.
Great. I know we are at time. If there's any sort of burning comments, get them in now.
Can just share some thoughts on the use cases as you were asking. I think that trading agents are already here. They're managing tens of millions, not a lot, but they're here, and I'm meeting them every day. Gaming agents are almost here as well. Then next year we'll see like categories of AI outputs that are already working, like creative agents. I want to create a video, create an image that will be exposed by agents through X402 endpoints. This is pretty close. While in the second part of 2026, probably we will solve the planning agent problem. Will somebody finally be able to book a vacation, a weekend for an agent? I think we're pretty close to that. And then analyst agents will come just after. So these are, I think, the categories that together, with twin and assistants that are getting more relevant also in the adult entertainment space. These are, I think, the 6 categories that we will see emerging in the next year and a half.
Awesome. Thank you guys very much for all of your different perspectives. I know we'll have a great set of questions later in the breakouts. Appreciate it. Thanks.